Mindrolling is back. I'm back. Yeah, I've been away. I've been traveling. I've been in India in the last couple of months. I've been in India and I've been in Maui doing that retreat with Ramdas and Krishnadas and other people. And you can still, by the way, watch some of that if you go to ramdas.org and just link over the top banner for No Death, No Fear that's still being streamed for another few weeks. I have to say that today's guest that I'm introducing you to, guests, there's two of them, two of my most favorite people in the world, Annie Lamott, who you've heard before on the podcast, and you know how much I love her work, her writing. She has a way with words that is non-parai. I don't know if that's the right way to pronounce that, but it is unparalleled. That's it. That's the French. So, yeah, like she says things like, my mind is a bad neighborhood that I try not to go into alone. Is that great or what? Or the difference between you and God is that God doesn't think he's you. She's so funny, and so I'm going to read a couple more. I got a couple more. I just got to share them. But first, I want to talk about something else. So on one of those trips, I was in India with my dear wife, Saraswati, and she has a wonderful yatra following in Ramdas's footsteps through the foothills of the Himalayas in a place called the Land of the Gods, Deva Bhumi. And it's, of course, where some of us with Ramdas lived there back in the day when we met Maharaji and was all in that area. And there's an amazing assortment of very sacred spots and temples where these siddhas, these beings beyond, have gone beyond subject object, shall we say, like Neem Karoli Baba, Sombari Baba, Harikan Baba, Brahmacharya Baba. I mean, just has been a hallowed land. So we got to go there. There's a beautiful ashram in a beautiful valley high up in the Himalayan forest, and traveling to these holy sites and then doing practices that Ramdas himself brought back from India back in the day. So it's the Himalayan Yoga Yatra, and I am going to join it again because I actually had a good time. Just hanging with people and showing them these spots. Nothing makes me more happy than to turn people on to stuff like that. So go to nourishinglife.com//yatra. nourishinglife.com/yatra. And you'll see all the information. You'll be able to register. This is going to happen in October of 2018. In fact, it starts September 30th. It goes on for about 11 days or so. So check it out. That's my commercial. This is not something that is an everyday thing for me. In other words, I think I'm going to do a couple of them, and I may step back. So this is your big chance if you want to come over there with me and Saraswati. She's continuing them for sure. So Annie Lamott and I got together with my partner there, Duncan Trussell, my guru, podcast guru. And we had this great chat. It was at the retreat that I just talked about that was streamed, that is still available as a stream, No Death, No Fear. And Bob Thurman was there, along with our close friends of Ramdas, Roshi Joan Halifax and Frank Ostaseski, of course, Krishnadas, and myself and Duncan. And so we just had a lively chat show, if you can imagine, involving Annie Lamott, Duncan Trussell, and myself. And I got to just read one more before we get this going. One more Annie's little truths. You can't get to any of these truths by sitting in a field, smiling beatifically, avoiding your anger and damage and grief. Your anger and damage and grief are the way to the truth. We don't have much truth to express unless we have gone into those rooms and closets and woods and abysses that we were told not to go into. When we have gone in and looked around for a while, for a long while, just breathing and finally taking it in, then we will be able to speak in our own voice and to stay in the present moment. And that moment is home. So great. Annie Lamott, Duncan Trussell, and me, Mindrolling in Maui. And please do enjoy, and we will see you soon. Well, we're sitting here at this lovely Ram Dass retreat. I'm sitting here with my partner, Duncan Trussell.
Hello.
And hi, Duncan. And luckily for us, Anne Lamott, Annie, welcome.
Thank you.
This must be it's a pretty good scene, though, right? We have a retreat around no death, no fear. Yet we are going snorkeling in the ocean and
turtle watching.
Yes.
And overeating.
a
while we're still
lot.
here on the mortal coil.
Yeah. So let me ask you. You came here. I don't even think you had no idea about anything. You just wanted to come and hang, right?
We wanted to come be with you in Ram Dass. So I was at doing an event in Seattle, and a woman who makes stuff for the jewelry to sell at the store came up to me and said who she was, and she was involved somehow. I said I was going to call Raghu this morning, or I was going to text, which I really had. And she wrapped this bracelet around, so sort of like tying a string around your finger in big time. And I came home and I wrote to you and I said, hey, Raghu, can Neil, my partner, and I come see you in Ram Dass? And you said, oh, why don't you just come be our guest at the retreat? So I said, okay. And we got tickets the next day, and then a few hours later we were here.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then, because you had no idea about no death, no fear.
No, we had no idea.
And now, do you have, what's your feedback? And all of a sudden being in the midst of Roshi Joan Halifax, Frank Ostaseski, Ram Dass, Krishna Das, and Bob Thurman, in terms of that particular teaching, because I've been hearing, he's been talking to a lot of people, Duncan, and there's a lot of young people here, and he's been saying, this is really scary stuff, especially if you're, in the younger generation. You're not thinking about death, and you probably have not necessarily been next to somebody in your family or whatever, amy not even a pet that's passed. So we've been trying to address that a little bit. Fortunately, Mr. Trussell provides some levity to the occasion, and then Bob Thurman did as well. But what's your take on the theme, and what are you getting?
Well, I've actually had a lot of deaths in my life. If you've read my stuff, you know my dad died, and very tragically, of brain cancer 40 years ago when I was young, and my best friend died, and after I had my baby, and I've just been somebody that if someone in someone's family is going to die, they know I've been through it, so I've always been sort of summoned because I don't feel scared about it. I feel scared that my son or my grandson will die, or my dog, panic-stricken, really. And but mostly I don't. And Neil, my partner, is a hospice volunteer, so we are. He's always coming home from people he's just visited, and we have a very dear friend who died while we were here. Actually, 2 days ago, and we've been with her a lot, and he's done a memoir with her, and so we've been immersed in her illness and being there and visiting, and. So I thought it was funny, because there are so many young people, and everywhere they went, it was like death, 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 rot. Because when you're a kid, too, when you're young, there's a lot more worms involved in the discussion of death, right? And there's songs that go with it.
The worms crawling.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, but when I was young, when I was young, my dad got so sick when I was 23, and this is in the mid-late 70s, and you literally didn't mention death. It was a bad manners. And it really wasn't until the AIDS epidemic that you could talk about death, and that someone's time was really short. You were supposed to not notice, that they weighed 70 pounds and and they needed oxygen, and you were supposed to because we were polite. We were children of the 50s. So, but when my dad got sick, Neil's heard this 1,000 times, but we had a really dear friend who also had cancer at the time, Susan Dunn, and you just didn't say the word. It was like a buzzkill, right? So they would sit outside the coffee house in Bolinas, and Dad would say, "Well, Susan, how's your cancer today?" Really loudly, And
Nice.
then my dad would say, "Well, my cancer's," Susan would say, "Well, my cancer's okay, I think. Ken, how's yours?" And he'd say, "Well, I think I'm a little weaker." And so I wrote, my first novel was called Hard Laughter, and it was about laughing about this very hard stuff. It's easy to laugh when it's delightful or neurotic or really universal and kind of kicky, but when you can laugh about this thing, when my dad died, it was like a nuclear bomb was falling on my family, because he was the center of our life. I have older and younger brothers, and so I kind of got stuck with it early on, but there wasn't this consciousness, there wasn't this spiritual nomenclature that we're talking about soul, as opposed to the broken down old car that's finally run its course, and so, but then I got involved with reading Ram Dass's books early on, and that took away a ton of fear. How old are you? Do you mind my asking?
44.
Are you really? God, you are so great looking. You have beautiful skin. It's a blessing. There's no reason to feel embarrassed. It's a blessing. I think probably God just loves you more than other people.
Oh,
that's how
that's
how it works.
How
That's the Christian path.
Because there is a hierarchical
There
love
is.
with
There
God,
definitely
right?
is. But you may get a much nicer seat in heaven because of it too, like near the dessert table or the cheeses.
You're not fooling me, Ann Lamott.
No, it's
the
true.
Cheese, yes.
The cheese and the baguettes.
God loves Dick Cheney.
Exactly
God
the
loves
same as he loves me. I've
yes.
written that. I have written that I would wash Dick Cheney's feet, and I
I'm
believe
quoting
he
you.
would wash mine. Yeah.
Yes.
But anyway, so I think it's scary. It's kind of tough stuff. But if I were young, oh my God, if I had this information at 30 and 40, my whole life would have been quantifiably better, easier, much more free, much more everything, because everything in us via the culture and our parents is to be terrified and shut down and not be with it, because first of all, it's bad manners, and second of all, it's just so defeating that you have this beautiful life and you've kind of conned some people into loving you, and you roped them in, and they're going to die. I have a grandchild who looks like God, and
Yes.
and he may die. I'm not positive, but he may die someday. And but to have known this and to have been able to dance with it, instead of to hide from it, would have changed my life literally more than any other information I could have gotten.
Everybody listen out there. I got to, everybody that's listening right now, this is exactly, this is what I said to you the other day when we talked about this, that it's, first of all, everything you just said is so apropos. I wish I would have started earlier. I would have been able to be a lot more friendly towards the fear and walk towards it rather than run from it. But the other thing is, in this whole thing, we're talking about, and I read this thing of Milarepa, where I went to conquer my fear of death, and he sat in a cave forever, and I found the deathless state, or that which...
When you said that, you know what I thought?
What?
How about Milarepa? You get strapped into a radiation, one of those radiation machines. I had testicular cancer.
I know.
Hey, Milarepa, you get strapped into a radiation machine when they're playing Tina Turner. When they decide to play Tina Turner and they're blasting your lymph nodes. Then let's talk about death. Oh, you went to a nice cave, beautiful with a great view, and you're a monk and you're not attached to anyone and you're wandering free and clear. What about the fact that you know what I'm talking about? What about that, Milarepa, where you've got to make the phone call to your family and be like, oh yeah, one of my balls has death inside of it. Then do a nice koan. Milarepa. That being said, I'm so grateful for these teachings because it certainly helped. I don't mean to sound cynical or jaded.
What I'm talking about is also it creates an environment where we can start to relate with that thing in us whatever we want to call it, soul, Buddha mind, whatever, nirvana, that is not subject to this fear. It's like Ram Dass's talk about you've got to operate on more than one plane at a time in this life. So that's very important. And by the way, Milarepa could have been in the MRI, the radiation machine, whatever.
Guarantee he wouldn't. He didn't drink Diet Coke. He didn't leave his laptop on his balls for 5 years straight. And may I ask you a question? You're saying you wish that you had this when you were younger. So many artists that I've talked to, particularly comedians, when they're confronted with this stuff, they say, I'm afraid this is going to destroy my ability to be funny. Do you think if you encountered this earlier on, would it have affected your writing in some way? Does that thought ever come into your mind that these kinds of positive transformations, or I know much of what you write about is faith and it's beautiful and deep, but looking at the stream of your evolution as an artist, do you worry? Do you ever think like, well, wait, maybe if I encountered this early on, I wouldn't have been such a great writer? Well,
yeah. I just want to say something before I answer your question, which is I totally love that you're resistant and that it's it's not like there's nothing on a bumper sticker that's going to throw the lights on for you and you're going to go, oh, well, that was then and now I'm absorbing the Greek and, hit me with your best shot life. It's not appropriate. It's appropriate. It's very human just to be afraid of that what we love most. It won't be. We can't reach each other by phone after a point, yes. And that's what I hate. And I loved last night. I forgot who was talking. Maybe it was Mr. Thurman when or I don't know who it was, but they said, "I don't want all that love. I want him back." I felt, and it's all truth is a paradox. And when Pammy died, I felt a lot of incredible spiritual support. Felt like I was in a basket of spiritual support, and I was enraged. And it took me over 10 years to stop being grief-struck and mad. And I hate that the culture tells you that you will get over it and that you should have a kind of a more, more evolved sort of take on it all. It's just a crock of shit. And that it does the stuff that enlivens us and heals us doesn't come on bumper stickers. It's hard fought, but a conference like this means that we're available for it. We show up, and before I turned on Woody Allen, he said 80% of life is just showing up, and we show up for it, and some of it gets in and some of it doesn't get in, and some of it you think that's ridiculous or not for me, thank you though.
Right.
Thanks so much, but I think not. Right. But anyway, it's like people are always saying, let go and let God. And I just want to stab them in the head with a fork like a baked potato. Like if I could let go of this right now, believe me, I would. I don't love being in this clenched, rashy state. But if somebody says something, God never gives us more than we can. It's like, well, God didn't say that for one thing, and that's just so patronizing, and it's just so arrogant. But thanks for sharing. But we're not friends anymore because now, whenever I see you, I will run. But thank you. And so. Anyway, for me, it was very, very evolutionary. I had all the Ram Dass books in my head, and it's like the E.E. Cummings poem. Plato told him, Lau told him, even General Yes Man Sherman told him. It took a nipponized bit of the old 12th Street L to tell him about death. Everyone can tell you about death. It takes death to help you let go, and go, okay, fine. This is my beautiful moment of surrender with God, as I say, with enormous bitterness. Okay, fine. Oh, and that's sort of how I could come to the point with death, going, okay, fine. But anyway,
I love that. That's so beautiful. That's so pure and
good
real.
Mantra.
Yeah, that's a mantra.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Whatever. I wrote a book, the three. I forgot. Help, thanks, while the three essential prayers, and I thought a great fourth prayer would be whatever. Whatever.
Whatever.
Whatever.
What's your acronym for God?
There's so many. One is good orderly direction. That's kind of for our Hindu and Buddhist friends, but we don't buy that for a second.
The one with despair.
I don't know. There's a good Gift of Desperation.
That's it.
That's a great one. Well, that's a very recovery-based one, and that's a very Dark Night of the Soul one. That you don't do the work if things are going really well and no one's mad at you, and you're doing fine financially and you've kept your weight down. Then there's no reason to do the deep dive into the truth of our spiritual identity, which is, eternal and dual citizenship of eternal and immortal, and here with our sore feet, and our testicular cancer and the whole holy enchilada. And I think that's what Houston Smith called it. But back to your question from 10 minutes ago, which was a good one. Do I think that having made friends with death earlier than I did, would it have changed my writing, or that kind of sense of urgency that I think probably artists are talking about when they say that this or that might have kind of either calmed them so much that they didn't get that very, very edgy writing going that made people respond. I always felt I got sober 32 years ago, but by the time I was sober, I had four books out already, and I had a career. I had this whole thing. I still live in the county where I was born and raised. I'm 64. Everyone I love and need, my aunts and uncle, my mom and dad and cousins, and everybody was there. So I was loved out of all sense of proportion, and I felt terror that if I stopped drinking, I would never write again, because I needed the misery, because I needed that edge, and I needed the shame, and I needed the raging sick ego. And I felt that without those, and then with, 10 or 11 cool, refreshing beers at night to relax with, I wouldn't be sufficiently crazy enough to even be funny anymore. But that's one of the lies of the disease, or of the ego, that if you are well and if you're happy, the jig's up, because, you agreed when you were a little kid not to be too big or too juicy, because it makes everybody else look like they're not doing that well. And, if you're doing too well, the whole psychological
I think
thing.
this in Christianity, this is the one of the really cool things about Christianity is that you get to use the word Satan. And I can't think of anything truly more satanic than that thought, a force in the universe telling you that should you become happy and healthy, then the thing you love doing the most will suck.
Right.
That's straight out of a imp's mouth. If you
the disease of addiction and black belt codependence and gambling and sex and love addiction, all of it, is and I don't use the word Satan, I can tell you very often, but I would say it's satanic, and I would say the drug cartels. It's very I don't think Trump is satanic. I feel like the raging narcissism inside of him is disease. He came from a family of disease. He had a violent father. His brother died of the father. His brother died suicide by alcoholism, and Donald Trump is still alive, but it's like a form of a very agitated, caffeinated death. that he brings to the common well, right? But I wouldn't say it is satanic. I would say the disease of the raging, hateful ego and addiction to power is satanic. And I've been with Neil a year and a half, and he's never, I don't think, heard me say the word Satan before, because then you always think church lady, and you're like, well, isn't that special?
Yeah.
But yeah, no. And then the funny thing is that when you heal the shame, and when you heal the raging, broken, wounded ego, it's a ping pong game, right? I know you're just like me in probably all important ways, that it's a constant ping pong game between the narcissism and the self-doubt and the self-loathing. And the jig is about to be up probably Wednesday right after lunch, right? I don't get to be a writer anymore. Right. I have to be an accountant or something. It's going to be really a stretch for me because I'm a dropout. But so it's constantly that I'm going to be this huge this thing, and when as it heals and you sort of settle down into the silt, it turned out it's like my windows got washed, and it was like the Huxley thing, doors of perception, but not approached from a psychedelic point of view, but from a cleaner windows and clean, easier, healthier breath and cleaner lungs, and And also the weird thing that you agreed not to do as a child, and you signed the contract for, to not pay attention, right? Because if you're paying attention in an alcoholic home, you're seeing stuff that they can't bear for you to see or to even know. And so if you grow up with sick parents, with mentally ill parents, the first thing you agree is not to see what's going on. And I have a mother who's passed, but who's English, and so the English tradition and the alcohol tradition. My father was we're raging atheists. The whole thing is their life depended on us agreeing not to see what was going on, and so it's very, very hard to trust the narration of your own life, whether you're writing novels or memoirs or just being a truth teller in the world, just being a instrument of the truth as it comes through you. It's very hard, and that's where writers have to begin, because you've been told that what you see is not actually going on. And because my mother was English, by extension, what you felt was not actually what you felt. And they would explain to you that you weren't feeling women in the 50s, you did not do anger. You did not do anger. You did not do grief, because grief made people crazy. And there was no death. So if you were crying because an animal had died, or my grandfather, it was like the big eraser came and got him when I was 6, and we didn't talk about it. And so if you were having feelings, you went to your room and you didn't eat. And all the women I know have including me, have had massive eating disorders and body, because if you had feelings, you were wrong. If you thought that this was going on, you were wrong, and you were wrecking everything for everyone. No wonder Mom and Dad had an unhappy marriage, with you spewing all these crazy hallucinations about their drinking or their mental illness, right? And so when I got sober, I hated it. I mean, I have always said that this place has not been a good match for me, because I was in the 50s. There was this book called The Overly Sensitive Child, and I was very, very sensitive. I had migraines. I had a sickness that wrecked the family further, and I was sensitive, and there wasn't the consciousness. It was post-war. The consciousness was that you bottle it up, and it's Eisenhower, and you mow the lawn, and it's Mad Men and all that. And there wasn't this consciousness that to have a big open heart and big goggly eyes that are seeing everything and taking it in was a beautiful thing. To grieve for a friend's lost dog was a beautiful thing, and it wasn't. It wrecked everything, you know. It's like, the battle cry at our house was, "Oh, for Christ's sake, Annie, now what?" I'm sad about India. There are pictures of children on the cover of the National Geographic, and there's bugs on their eyes. And we're at the pound, and we're going to get a cat, but there's 30 cats, and this is very upsetting for me. I know we can't take them all home, and I would have to go outside because I felt the whole suffering of the world, and it was like, no, it's just ridiculous. There's nothing you can do, they said.
Do you buy the stuff Thurman was saying about we choose our parents, and do you play around with the concept that for whatever reason you dropped into this dimension choosing parents that were going to squelch your
Okay, wait, you got to just frame this a little bit more than this concept. You're up there, and they'd be good. This is the complexity of karma, and what actually happens is beyond rational mind.
Right.
I mean, he was simplifying this in that moment to give people an idea that you came in and you described this intense family life with, illness and so on, and the kind of neuroses that piled up like in a big. I could give you maybe not as big a pile, but a pretty big pile that would compare to your pile. He probably could as well. And there is something to the fact that this is what we did need for you to be able to share the way that you share with people would not have been possible without that pile of neuroses, probably. I mean, I'm sure of it because I read your books and I see myself in so much of it, as many people do, which is why, they buy the books. We should talk about that. One thing Thurman did say, Bob did say, he talked about how we indulge our neuroses as well. I mean, and that's something that we never talk about, and in terms of like, and you mentioned a little bit in terms of a grief and how it's been many, many years that you've grieved over this person, right? And he talked about, okay, we gotta realize that we're indulging our neuroses at some level. We've got to say, okay. I mean, he was very glib about it in that moment, yes, but I remembered it because I was thinking of my friend Ramesh. I don't know if you met Ramesh and Kate.
I had
You had
breakfast
breakfast
with them,
here.
yeah.
So, they lost their 14-year-old in a bike accident. And I was thinking about her, who's had a tough time for these last 4 or 5 years. So, yeah, what do you think about how our neuroses, how we kind of pile on whatever it is that we are dealing with, and we pile on? Do you feel there's an indulgence on our part?
Well, I just also want to say that a few times I've heard you express things or doubt or do you really think or whatever, and you always seem to get shamed for it. And I think it's a little bit shaming to cut him off as if he didn't quite understand. I mean, everyone's using shorthand.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I think it's a little shaming, but because no one knows, and Bob Thurman is not the boss of me, and I saw a girl at the last Women's March, and she had a T-shirt on it said, "I obey no authority but my mom."
That is so awesome.
And what I think is I don't have a clue, and that there are times where, like when my friend Pammy died with a little baby, which if I were God's West Coast representative, this would not have happened. This was a mix-up. It was supposed to be Donald Rumsfeld. And it was like paperwork foul-up. And I can't get okay with it at this, but all truth is paradox, and I accept it, and when she was dying, I was, do you know Dale Borglum? Of course, sorry. You know Dale Borglum. He was
friend, yes.
He was her living dying coach. Yeah, so that's how I knew.
Now I remember. Yeah.
And so he was kind of coaching me too, because it was the end of the world for me too. We've been best friends since high school, and she'd helped me raise my child for a couple of years, and so he was of your ilk, Raghu, your ilky ilk.
Yes, he was ilking with us back
he was
in the day.
He was ilking with you back
India,
with Maharaji. And so he had a reincarnation feeling, and and he didn't ever try to correct my thinking. I feel like people keep trying to correct your thinking, and I saw it on stage a couple times, and I mentioned it to Neil, and I said I thought that was kind of shaming, but anyway,
it is part of our shtick.
Yeah.
May I respond to that quickly, just because I know that it can seem like that, and I know some people interpret it as that.
Okay,
but that is the shtick.
Okay.
You're mostly seeing. I do not feel shamed by them.
Okay.
And it's good to hear that, though, because I don't want people to feel uncomfortable as though I'm up there thinking, "Oh my God, these people are shaming me."
Right.
Because the truth is, they've really helped me and
embraced
taught me
you
so much, and embraced me and helped me open up. And honestly, like whatever they do to smack me down, it doesn't even matter.
Well, that's what Neil said. Neil said that's not what's going on. That's kind of like my projection of being a little kid, where I was feeling corrected all the time, or that. But also, by the same token, they're all really old, and they're going to die soon, and you're still young.
Yeah.
So, like, who
so much,
cares? Like, bore me later, Raghu.
Well, I ask you that because
Right.
when you're what you're doing, I think to myself what he's saying too. I look at these things as lenses to look at things through.
Right.
True or false, who knows?
Right.
But I think, have you ever heard the idea that Terrence McKenna says, a shaman is a sick person who's healed themselves? Have you ever heard that before?
No.
And how just this brief chance to chat with you, it's like, oh my God, I feel liberated, and it's because you did it. You did it. And because you did it, you've done it for so many of us. You suffered for us. I mean, that is Christianity, isn't it?
Do you have a particular path you're on?
Oh, I chant Hare Krishna and Ram. And,
you do?
But I love Jesus. And
You're a chanty guy.
I love chanting.
Yeah, I love Jesus too. I mean, how can you not love Jesus? It's like not loving E.T. or something, right? Right. But I want to say two quick things about the question too. Is when when I was with Dale, and he was kind of like birth coaching me through this death, and
he's great. by
He
the way,
is
everybody
amazing.
out there.
Living
Dale
Dying
Borglum.
Project. Yeah. Living Dying Project in Fairfax. But so I would kind of, as I said, dance with the reincarnation a little bit and wonder and find solace in the fact that maybe Pammy had known, and before she got here, before she got assigned her biography or whatever, that she was going to only live to 37. She'd have a baby, she'd have us, and that she signed on for it because it was exactly what she needed to get free and to get into union with God. And it brought me a lot of solace. And I didn't just plug into it like a software or something. You know, it feels absolutely true, but it's not my path. And so I would kind, it's part of me. It's like a weave. I'm like a fruitcake. I mean, except I hate fruitcake, but I'm like,
Me too.
yeah, it's not even an edible. But anyway, then there's two things. One thing I wanted to share with you because I think you would love it is that this guy that was not an alcoholic, a priest who helped AA get off the ground, said, sometimes I think that heaven is just a new pair of glasses, and so you were talking about lenses, you see you see through this, you see through Bob Thurman's lens, and it's all true. And then I kind of resist, and I can't stand when people think that they have the truth, and I thought it was the truth. I don't disagree with anything Bob said, and yet I kind of bristle if somebody thinks, and Neil does it all the time, and I always have to smack him down. But
Neil is here, by the way.
Neil's here,
everybody.
and I am so in love with him. But he'll think that how he was healed is the best, the only healing path. But the other thing I wanted to say was that years after Dale and I worked together, I read that book by Carolyn Mace. Have you ever read it, called Sacred Contracts? It's going to blow your mind, and you are going to owe me forever.
All right.
Yeah, which is what I'm doing this, why I'm doing this.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm in.
So, and I'll call in that Chet at some point. But you read that book, right? It's Sacred Contracts.
But I know of it, and
when you're in
my wife's into it.
Yeah.
My mom loved her.
Yeah, she's fabulous. I love that she's so brilliant and she's so cranky. That just adds such a realm of authenticity to it.
Yes.
She's lovely. She's hilariously funny. She's judgmental. She's bossy. She's cranky, and she's sharing the truth. And it's just like with Bob Thurman. I grok it, but I don't always weave it into my clothing. But this book blew my mind because it was that before you came here with God Assigned the Body and the biography, that you like there's somebody I just can't stand. There's a couple of people. I want to write a book called All the People I Still Hate, A Christian Perspective.
Oh.
Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great? But with these people that really have hurt us or continue to hurt us or continue to just make us nuts because of their behavior, which is awful, 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 objectively, you can start to see that you made some kind of contract with them before you got here. And you say to the woman in this case, this hypothetical case, I am going to need you to mess with my family at a level I'm not even sure you're willing or able to do. And it's going to be a massive financial attack on us. It's going to be legal, and it's going to be public. You're going to go big. It's going to involve media. And then she would say, oh, no, I could do that. I think that would be fun. Are you sure? You go, yeah. Let's do that. And she'd say, well, what I need for you to do, you're going to win. And that's going to make me crazy, and I'm going to have to take some of this underground, and it's going to cause some stuff that I don't know if you're prepared for. I go, no, I'm in. And I have had an experience of two people that have hurt me and my family at the deepest possible level. And once while meditating, while thinking about this sacred contract, and sitting on the floor with my back up and my knees drawn to me, I felt her literally beside me in labor. And it felt absolutely as real as you right here with your skin, and I felt her, and I started to laugh out loud because I got it, and I could feel her laughing too.
Wow.
Right. And I don't need to ever see her again. This isn't about wanting to have lunch with someone. This is about this deeper kind of cosmic quantum healing and release into the good. Instead of that cramped, clenched, rashy, ugliness that makes us part of what is so excruciating in the current government.
Wow.
So that's a book I think you would love. And you don't have to take it all. There's nothing that you sign at the end, but it's like what we were talking about with reincarnation, that it kind of comes through exactly when you need it, and you get it, and it's true, and it bathes you in itself, in the truth of itself, and you can breathe again. And then you're home, right? As soon as you can breathe again, that's home.
Did I ever tell you, because I don't think we've ever really talked about Christ when we've had chats. Did I ever tell you that when we went to see Maharaji Neem Karoli Baba, literally in the first few times, all he talked about was Christ? Did you know that?
No, I've known that from the other
from
guys.
Dale?
Yeah, and you said something about it yesterday with a mic in your hand, I think.
Yeah, or Krishnadas tells the story of the Canadian guy, meaning me, who went, because I met my guru, so you figure Hindu guru, get a mantra, you're fine. And I said, well, so how do I meditate? Because I was thinking mantra, meditate. I didn't even know what I was talking about. He said, meditate like Christ. When he was nailed to the cross, he felt love, not pain. He was lost in love with everything. And then the next day we went back, and I got Ram Dass to say, well, how did he meditate? Which is this famous story. And he just went back, closed his eyes, and tears came. And right then we experienced Christ in that moment. And we were all Jewish who had no relationship. I had never read the New Testament. And then after, he used to say, did you read his book? Huh? Who? His book. Isha, which is Jesus in Hindi. So there is a tremendous teaching that we got around Christ in India before anything. It was Christ and Hanuman. They're the same. Service to man and so on.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I never told you this, so I just, because it made me think about it. It's really
thank you. Yeah.
elemental to us. And one of the things that our friend Bob, said yesterday, which really struck me, was about what this fabric is that we are connected to by love, which is a tough word because it's so, it means romantic love to us here in the West for the most part. And he said, and I guess the Tibetans, how they approach it is, love means how happy you can make another person.
Right, yeah.
Was that great? I mean, I really love that. And that's, I get that feeling in your writing and in your books. So.
Oh, thank you. Well, I really love that thing Rumi said, that through love, all pain will turn to medicine. And that has really guided me as a storyteller, because the medicine of the people that I have been given life by, really, has sprung from pain. And all great comedians, it's sprung from pain. There's a new book on Robin Williams coming out next week, and it springs from this intense isolation.
Sure.
All of it, that huge world that was Robin Williams, springs from an attic with 300 toy soldiers, and giving them different personalities and voices and situations. But through love, all pain will turn to medicine. And so that we know that, and Jesus says, everything I can do, you can do, And he goes up to the blind man, he puts dirt in his hand and spits in it and makes mud and puts it on the guy's eye. And he doesn't say, what do you plan to look at now that I've given you your sight back? Right? He just heals because he knows he's got, it's like Neil would call it, a parlor trick. He can heal.
Yeah.
And so we can heal too, but the way that people like us would heal is just by telling the truth and being kind of playful with it sometimes, but not at the cost of trying to make it cuter and more digestible than it is, but because we're funny, just because that's a gift,
right?
And a defense and all that. But it's
Big
also
time.
just such a gift, such a blessing to have a sense of humor and one that is transmittable. But I was thinking also what one of you guys said. There's a story of a little girl who's scared to death to go to sleep in the dark, and she keeps calling out for her mom, and her mom will come in and say, Jesus is right here with you, don't be afraid, And then the mother goes out to her bedroom, and after all, the child calls for her again, and the mom comes in and says, Jesus, right here on the bed with you. There's no reason to be afraid. You can't be anywhere where Jesus is. This goes on and on. Finally, the last time the mother comes in, she sits down with the child and says, Jesus, right here with you. And the child says, I need someone with skin on.
Right. Yes.
Right. And that's what we need here sometimes. Most people aren't going to get to India, to the Hanuman temple. But that someone with skin on, there's no difference, right? Because there's no difference between me and anyone. And that if I just sit with you, I mean, that was a miracle that at some point we learned to listen. I mean, that was not a huge part of the toolkit that our parents shared with us. You know, the thing was about being conversational and being brilliant, being erudite. And now this whole thing from the 60s and the 70s of listening as the great medicine, of saying, yeah, I got a minute, what's going on? Yeah. And then not, as my parents said, not correcting what the person thinks is going on and saying, well, no, here's another way, here's a better way to look at it. Just listening and nodding, going, yeah, me too, yeah, I know exactly.
You know, that is the technique in psychedelic harm reduction in the trainings that they do for festivals is just what you said, is when someone is having a really bad trip, the last thing you want to do is correct or judge or anything with their experience. If you just listen compassionately, they'll calm down. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you, what Neem Karoli Baba said about Jesus, will you say that again?
Well, when finally he said, tears came down and he said, you don't understand. He kept repeating, you don't understand. He is one with every sentient being. He was lost in love.
The thing on the cross.
He felt no pain, only love.
What do you think about that? Because I hear that sometimes, and my version of Jesus is this broken, terrified.
He had a very human death, and it is the grimmest, shittiest death they could come up with at the time. And he's killed next to criminals too, right? It's the most ignominious and excruciating death. But he and God he's in labor, and God never leaves him for a second. And he, there's a song we sing, Only Love held him there on the cross. Whoa. He could, and it says he could have called 10,000 angels to come to his rescue. Only love held him there at the cross. And he just was going through labor like you have not gone through labor, and yet. It's a big yet for you.
Long time down the road.
And but about halfway through, you realize you don't like children, and that. but you're not alone, and you're with people who are helping you not believe that your thinking is where the buck ends, and they're giving you ice chips and extremely cold apple juice. It's communion, and my younger brother was there, my best friend Pammy was there, and nurses and doctors and so when you forget that you don't like children, they take your mind off that you're just in a process. It's contraction and release and breath and peace and oh no, here it's back, it's okay. Remember the last one? You contract, you constrict, it hurts really like a mother. And I think that's where that comes from. And you constrict and then you release. And you breathe, and you relax, and you rest, and it's what heaven will be like. A new pair of glasses, and they give you ice chips and some very cold apple juice. Yeah, and then you know what comes out? New life. And that's what Jesus was saying. He was saying, I'm going to do this. Only love is holding me here. And I love you so much that I've stretched my arms out as far as they will go. And they nailed him to the wood. But if the tradition is that if you were the only person on earth, Jesus would have died that humiliating and excruciating death because he was in labor. And he had this labor coach, Mother God.
Beautiful,
wonderful, Annie. Okay, we're pretty close here, but I want to give you. Do you have one more something that you want to get some words of wisdom from Annie?
How do you follow that?
Well, I'll tell you another story that you will really like.
Okay.
The great Barry Lopez said, sometimes we need stories more than we need food. But I heard a story on the radio, so this is not from like some brilliant Hindu holy woman or man, but it was a story of the man who was speaking had a brother who was 5 when the speaker, whoever it was born, and the 5-year-old brother, it was like the end of the world, as it was for my older brother when I was born, because he was like the prince. You know, he had it all in place. He was the first of the grandchildren. It was all perfect. And then me, his first words to mom and dad were, "Take it back." And and anyway, so this little boy, the 5-year-old's waiting for the mother to get ready to go to the hospital. And he's just so scared and sad. His parents are in the bedroom next door, and they're a religious family. And he calls out to the dad, "Daddy, are you there?" And the father says, "I'm right here. I'm always right here." It's like Jesus calls God Abba, Father, for Daddy.
Yeah.
He calls him Daddy. It's very, very intimate. And he's, "Daddy, are you there? You know I'm right here. I'm always here. I'm always here." And there's a long pause, and then the little boy says, "Is your face turned toward me?"
Wow.
And that's my Jesus experience.
Wow.
You know, somebody said, some writer said, absolutely the greatest gift you can give anyone is your full, absolute attention.
That's right.
And so hard for most of us to give partial attention, and especially in these times. And I've said this a billion times. We had a whole retreat around trust last time we were here. And I told people, and I think I was with Duncan and Ram Dass, and I said, when I first met Ram Dass, I knocked on the door to an apartment in Montreal where I was, and he opened the door, and he gave me the most attention I had ever been given in my... maybe when I was a baby, my mother might have given me, but after, that was easily forgotten. And I was like astounded that somebody who didn't know me would do such a thing, To this day, that has, and that led me to trust him enormously, 100%, and go to India right away. Followed him to India right after that. But to this day, and I, as the director of Love Serve, remember, I'm fielding all the stuff that would come to Ram Dass, because at this point, he's just not going, he cannot do that. He doesn't have the bandwidth for it. And every time I have him in mind to give, and I can't, and I'm not there yet, but I'm getting better. I tell him this all the time. You're in my mind all the time as a model to give attention to people and not dismiss it no matter what, which as you see, he does not ever, right today. And that's today. He wants to go give that attention to every person. And, of course, it's a problem because he doesn't have the energy. But he doesn't care about himself. And it's that, letting go of caring so much about ourselves, which is really the key to this. Thank you, Annie.
You're welcome.
Thank you so
Duncan.
You're welcome.
This is like...
Thank you. Are you kidding? I can't believe I get to be here.
Favorite people. I'm lucky.
Thank you.
So lucky.
Thank you.
I'm so glad to know you now.
Can
you believe it? What a scam, right? I know. It's like with the God thing, what's the catch? And it's like, that's the catch. There's no catch.
Yeah, right.
Just is. Love is.
Yeah. There you go.
Thank you.